Hello, weird travelers, night owls, and midnight marauders. This is Dr. Green, and I'll be your host this evening on Amityville Horror Radio. Tonight's tales involve those supernatural beings we are not supposed to talk about, the Wendigos. First up, Close Call with the Flesh Pedestrian by Flaky Jakey 007, narrated by DanieDreadful. Now, let's begin the dissection.
This is my third time hearing these strange sounds in my small rural town in the last 3 years. Last month in August, me and my friend went down to a place in the woods near my home. Probably a 3-minute drive or so on our ATVs. There's a road that leads into a field that then leads down to a creek pond shoreline that has a forest right behind the shoreline. Anyways, most days we go down there to build things such as benches and collect rocks for the fire pit. This time we were building a lean-to structure. It almost resembles a small teepee. My friend was screwing some bolts into the post that connected with the tarp we got from Canadian Tire. Well, while he was doing that, I went to grab some waters from the cooler. As soon as I went to open it, I heard the oddest yelp cry I've ever heard, at least in the forest about 100 yards away. I disregarded it as a crow or seagull and grabbed 2 waters. One was freezing and the other wasn't. Kind of weird, right? Yo, one of these waters are... I couldn't even finish my sentence before I heard it. Help! God, someone help! Someone help, anyone! It sounded as if they were getting their insides pulled out or if they were getting eaten by a cougar or a mountain lion. I looked over at my friend's face. It was white as the clouds, as was mine. I put my machete and my 2 axes back into my storage bag. He put his axe on his rack attached with bungee cords. We ripped out of there as quickly as we could and into the field. We both called our parents and explained the situation. Both of them said to try to find whoever was crying out. The thing was, we believed in Wendigos and skinwalkers religiously, but we also didn't want someone to die because we were just too scared, or something of native folklore. So, we did go and look for them anyway, and we found no trace of any living thing within those 100 or so yards near the area. Thinking back on the situation, we should have called the cops to get a search team to try and locate where the cries were coming from, but we didn't think of it. I've also been checking if any people in the area have been reported missing, and there was no one even near me. If you want to hear the other 2 stories, just comment or upvote, so I know.
Our next story, Skinwalker in the Woods by Dark Ryan, narrated by only Coyote.
I live right next to a Navajo reservation, and have made friends with many of the people there my age. We like to hang out, play video games, and just be normal teens. I walk over a lot since my best friend lives a little less than a mile away from me. This isn't a long trek, and usually only takes me about 25 to 30 minutes. I've made this trip dozens of times, and I've grown up very comfortable with it. I know the people along the way, so I'm not scared or on edge. There is a patch of forest, however, about midway there. It's a little unnerving sometimes. There's always that feeling of being watched. This was a regular occurrence for me, so I tried to just ignore it and shake it off as my mind playing tricks on me. This day I spent more time at my friend's house than I meant to, and when I left it was already getting dark. I reached the stretch of forest right as the sun disappeared from the sky. I shivered a little as I readied myself to begin the journey through. I was 10 steps in when I heard a branch snap. You know the sound, the one that screams there's definitely someone or something there with you. I froze, not sure of what I should do next. Should I run? Should I turn around and book it back to my friend's house? I didn't know the best option in this situation. I whispered, "Hello?" hearing my voice crack as the words fell from my lips. I don't know why I even opened my mouth. but it was out there, so I listened for any reply. My heart sank when the answer came back in the sound of my voice. Hello? I started to breathe too fast. My heart pounded against my chest. I felt like I might faint. Hello? My voice came again, but not from my mouth. I wanted to run, but my feet felt cemented to the ground. I couldn't scream. I couldn't reply, as my voice echoed over and over from a short distance away. I couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. It sounded like it was everywhere around me. Hello? 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 It repeated. Stop it! I finally managed to tear from my lips. Everything went silent. For a long minute, nothing happened. The air grew stale, and I realized for the first time there were no typical forest sounds. There were no bugs, no frogs or crickets. Nothing. I stood there terrified, waiting to see what would happen next. Stop it, it mimicked back. I had had enough, and was willing my heavy legs to move. Before I could step, I heard rustling in the bushes 20 feet to my left. I watched in horror as a deer head with huge antlers protruded through the brush. As it came further out and stood up on two legs, I took off. I flew out of those woods and all the way home in record time. I said nothing to my mom when I got there. I just went up to my room, laid down, and thought about what happened. My mother came in at some point and asked me if everything was alright. I replied, yes, that I was just tired. I don't know why I didn't tell her. I guess I might have been afraid how she would react. I called my friend and told him everything. He freaked out and told me that no matter what happened that night, to not reply or look out my window. This terrified me even more. He said to call him the next morning and he would explain more, and that he had to speak to his grandfather as soon as possible. That night I didn't sleep, at all. I stayed awake listening to every little sound the night about it. Around 3 a.m., just as I was about to drift off, the air changed. The night sounds quieted. I felt my heart begin to pound. I lay there and waited, pulling the covers up over my head like a child, far too scared to move. It came after a long moment. Hello? Hello? I cried. It was all I could do. Hello? Stop it! It mocked what I had said in the woods again. It was terrifying enough when it copied what I said. But then it did something new. It called my name.
Amy.
My mother's voice.
Amy. Amy, come here.
Hello? Stop it! My voice again. For the rest of the night, the creature outside my window called my name in my mother's voice and repeated what I had said in the woods over and over. In the morning, when the sun broke through the dark, it finally stopped. I fell into a fitful sleep. I woke around 12 to my friend calling to tell me he had spoken to his grandfather and could explain what happened to me. He said there was a creature they called Naldlushi. He who goes on all fours, or a skinwalker. He explained that it was an evil witch that used dark magic to transform into an animal with attributes it required, and that it had caught my scent and knew me now. I was also given a warning that since it knew me, it would always follow me, that I would always have to be careful. Last night I heard scratching on my window, then a low hum. The creature began saying my name again, but also adding in things I hadn't said in my mother's voice. At one point it started calling my name, but drawing it out really far, like
Amy.
it tried to get me to come outside, or to open the door and let it in my house. This went on all night. At this point, I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. Is it seriously going to stalk the shadows around me for the rest of my life? I don't think I can take that.
Up next, A Wendigo Broke Into My House by Blood Hunter 62, narrated by MrFreakyStory.
Before I begin, I am a 16-year-old male. About 3 years ago, I was in Virginia visiting family over summer. We were right outside the DC area and staying in a 2-story house near the freeway. On the other side of the freeway was a forest. So my mum, her boyfriend Eric, and I were all staying with Eric's parents. We had some night vision binoculars and decided that tonight was the perfect time to use them. So after dinner, we gear up and head out. We pass under the freeway and head into the woods. When we get about 5 minutes into the forest, we set down our bag and took out our binocs. My mum looks around with them for a while, seeing a few squirrels here and there. She gets tired of them and passes them to me. I look around for a while, being careful not to look at the freeway for fear of being blinded. I spot something behind a tree about 50 feet to our left. I concentrate on it, trying to figure out what it is. It looks like a pale, bold, anorexic man looking straight at us from behind the tree. I get a bit uneasy, but I'm hesitant to believe it's really there. I ask Eric to take a look just in case. To my despair, he sees it too. He describes it the much same way I did. Now, Eric is a former amateur boxer, and I train MMA almost every day, but neither one of us wants to stick around with that thing. We start heading back to the house, crossing under the freeway. We take another look behind us as a car comes by. All three of us see glowing eyes lit up by the headlights on the other side of the freeway. We say fuck that and head back to the house. When we get back, Eric's parents are asleep, and my mum and Eric go upstairs to the guest room. There's only one guest room, so I have the couch downstairs. I'm a little too excited after seeing the thing in the woods, so I end up staying up all night. Around 3 a.m., I'm watching TV and start hearing footsteps above me. I immediately remember our earlier encounter and panic a little. I tried to calm down and told myself it's just one of the dogs or maybe someone who couldn't sleep. I keep hearing the footsteps for a while until I hear a doorknob jiggle. I find it weird that they're trying to open a locked door, but try to ignore it. They stop, walk around for a few more minutes, and then it's quiet again. I stay up until the sun starts coming up, and then pass out. My mum wakes me up, and I remember the footsteps from the night before. I describe what happened and ask if any one of them got up at any time. She says no, and I think it must have been one of the dogs. That is, until she tells me the room above me is the office. No one was in the office, and the door stays locked at night. My heart sinks as I piece it all together. I don't know if it was that thing for sure, but I think it was. I've done a lot of research since then trying to figure out what that thing was that night. I found two creatures that seemed to match it. I think it was either a skinwalker or a Wendigo. Whichever one it was, I'm just thankful that door was locked. I know I wouldn't be able to fight that thing no matter how tough I am.
Our final story, True Skinwalker Sighting by Queen of Horror 666, narrated by Dr. Grimm. To start this story off, and to give a little insight about me, I'm an 18-year-old female who grew up in Michigan and have lived in the country for as long as I can remember. And for heads up, this is a long story, so bear with me. Now back to the story. On one particular hot summer weekend, me and a couple of friends, including my boyfriend, let's call him Tony, and my older brother, let's call him Brad, decided we were gonna go camping for the weekend. Since it was such a nice warm week, Tony's parents had owned a cabin way out in the Lutning, surrounded by a huge wooded area with a personal lake and no neighbors for at least 4 miles. But being stupid teenagers, we didn't really think about that. All we were ready for was to party like a normal teens would like to do. Well, after being there for 2 hours, our fun had finally started. Tony's friends had bring a ton of alcohol and weed to last us for the weekend, so we wouldn't be bored since we had no service and only movies to watch. After it got around 12 a.m. and was pitch black, we had a huge bonfire. It was a total of 6 people, including me and Tony, as we talked and laughed about upcoming events in our lives. We were distracted that we didn't notice that my brother had literally frozen his eyes onto one section of the woods. Mind you, we were all intoxicated and high at the time. Eventually our talking ceased when Tony realized his friend and my brother had an emotionless express. "Hey dude, you alright?" he asked Brad. Silence. Brad didn't reply or even make a movement that would indicate he heard him. After that, I started to get scared as well as the other girls there. It looked like he was frozen in place. It took a lot of time for my brother to act that way. Eventually, I was the first to catch on that he was excessively staring into a certain spot in the woods. I turned my head and followed his gaze the best I could, and when I finally caught on to what he was staring at, my heart dropped. There, right fucking there, was at first look a dog. At least that's what I thought. It was some person's dog that wandered off. But then my brain kicked in and I realized there wasn't neighbors for miles. So how could there be a dog? My mind started to race while Tony still tried to get Brad to speak or even move. In one motion, this thing stood up tall, and when I say tall, I mean freaking gigantic. It had to be at least 6 foot tall. Everyone's seen it then. How could you not? The other 2 girls and the other boy with us gasped as they finally grasped why my brother was as still as a stick. No one moved for what it seemed like hours. Tony was the first to talk. "No tail," he mumbled. No one heard what he said, but Brad, and I swear to you when I say his eyes widened as big as a pan sauce. That freaked me out immediately. "What did you say?" one of the girls asked. "It has no freaking tail," he hissed at her. My heartbeat stopped. He was right, there was no tail on this thing. Suddenly, my clouded alcohol mind cleared up in a fraction of a second when I finally realized what this thing was. Now I understood why my brother was basically shitting his pants. This thing was a skinwalker. My instincts kicked in right then and there, but before I could the freak out, the thing let off a terrible snitch, like rotting meat, before screaming inhumanly, like a wounded animal. The sound was enough to scare the freak out of us. My brother was the first up, out of his chair, and started shouting native words to the creature. Why I told everyone to get the freak out of there. No one questioned me when they seen just how dead serious I was. Especially Tony. He's never seen me so scared, so he knew it was a bad situation. We all hightailed it into the cabin with my brother in tow, still shouting native words at the creature, which seemed to keep it at bay. While it gave us enough time to get inside, we slammed and locked the door before turning all the lights off and grabbing a special ash from the kitchen counters and started throwing it at every window and door while chanting. Of course, he had everyone freaked out and basically in tears at that moment. After he was done, no one said a word for a long time. All of us still in shock. He grabbed our dad's pistol and had it posted by him for hours. Everyone was entirely too shaken up to even question what happened. We must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke up to my brother packing all our stuff into 2 cars early in the morning. I understood why. We had native family. We knew what we were dealing with and we knew it would come back and maybe not alone. Before we left, I did a blessing on the cabin and spoke a few calming words to the still freaked out girls. We left as soon as everything was packed up. To this day, we still haven't explained exactly to our friends what happened that night, and they never bothered to ask ever again. Well, that's it for us at HR. We hope you enjoy listening to these narrations. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more haunting stories.